What's up everyone, and thank you for stopping by the channel. Today's project is this vintage Weedeater brand leaf blower, and the problem is that it won't start. Let's take a good look at it and see if we can find out what's wrong with it, and hopefully we can fix it. In this video, we repair this blower. However, it may not be the exact repair that you need to make to yours. We'll explore other situations later in the video. This blower is in really good condition, and it's probably because it was built much better than the equipment from big box stores today. There is another difference though, and it's a big one. Its size. This thing has to be the biggest handheld blower I've ever used. So here's my snap-on impact for a size and weight comparison. This blower is almost 3 times the weight of the impact. Another problem is that the pull rope is a bit sticky. Now it still works though, and it pretty much shows that the engine has plenty of compression left in it. We still have to make sure it works before we start tearing into it. Let's put some fuel into the carburetor throat and try starting it. Well, luckily for us it ran, so let's keep looking at it. Unfortunately though, after taking the gas cap off, we found that the filter was floating around inside the tank. That means we'll have to check for debris in the inlet screen inside the carburetor, and of course replace the fuel line. The bad news is we have to completely disassemble the outer cover just to get to the carburetor and the fuel tank. I'm not going to spend too much time showing this process though. Now carefully pry up on the edge of the off switch, that way you can disconnect the wires from it and then take the wires loose from the cover. So here's the recoil assembly at the bottom of the engine. I'm going to try and spray some WD-40 in it first before trying to take it apart. This is the single fuel line that runs to the tank and the carburetor, so this will be easy to replace. We just have to follow the original routing of the line. After taking a good look at the engine, it looks a lot like the 32cc engines common on Ryobis from the same time period. Those were extremely powerful too, but were also really heavy. And after doing some minor cleaning, we can see the markings on the side of the carburetor that'll help you replace it if you don't want to service it. Now before I forget, I'm going to remove the adjustment limiter on the carburetor. This will allow us to fully adjust the carburetor when we get it started. After removing the top plate of the carburetor, we can see the pumping diaphragm. And what we're looking for are that these two flaps here are flat and laying against the carburetor, which these are, so this one's good. If we remove the diaphragm, we can see the round inlet screen is clear of any debris. So let's move on to the other side of the carburetor. The next thing we'll do is remove the plate covering the metering diaphragm. And what we find here is a diaphragm that's still pretty pliable, but it's a bit misshapen. Now, if we don't change it, I think it'll still work, but it might not run like it's supposed to. So I think it's a good idea if we replace it. Now before we go any further, we need to put some fuel on the inlet screen and test that it will flow through the carburetor to the other side. Then what you'll do is depress the rocker arm on the other side and the gas should disappear from the inlet screen. And unfortunately it didn't do that. So now we have to remove the rocker arm and the needle to clear the passage with a small diameter wire. And while pushing the wire through the passage, it's also going to push the screen out of the carburetor. That way we can soak it in some carburetor fluid so it'll get cleaned. And after the screen has been soaked a couple of times, we can now put it and the needle and the rocker arm back into the carburetor so we can do the same test yet again. Now, doing this part is really dangerous outside, as the spring has a tendency to pretty much fly away, so you might want to do this inside, preferably near a wall. And luckily for us, the fuel did pass through the screen this time, so now we can put the carburetor back together. Metering diaphragms are only a couple of dollars on eBay or Amazon. However, if you buy more than one, say 5, it ends up being basically about $1 a piece. The next thing on the list is to replace the fuel line. Now, the original line is 125 thousandths of an inch thick, so that's what I'm going to use. You can buy this at big box stores or order it online. You're going to want to run the line the same way the original line was ran through the engine, and then cut the end of the line at an angle. This will make it easier to push into the fuel tank. Once you fish the line out of the tank, cut the angle end off and then insert the fuel filter, and then put the filter and the line back into the tank. And once that's done, cut the other end to length and then connect it to the carburetor. Don't forget to reconnect the throttle cable to the carburetor and then install it along with the choke plate back onto the engine. I'm going to remove the spark plug before I spray some WD-40 on the recoil spring. This will help make pulling the recoil easier and allow the lubricant to work its way into the spring. And once that's done, we can now put the plastic covers back onto the engine. Another reason why your blower may not be starting is if there's a problem with your spark plug. I've only seen this for myself a couple of times, so it's kind of rare. Luckily, spark plugs are cheap to replace. I'm not going to use the drill to put the screws back on since there's a good chance of stripping them. I will, however, use the drill to put the nut and the bolt back onto the top handle. Now that it's finally back together, let's put some fuel into the tank and then try starting it. I'm going to cheat just a little bit. Since there's no primer bulb on this blower, I'm going to prime the carburetor manually. This will help remove air from the lines and fill them with gas. Well, it doesn't want to idle, so I'm going to turn the only adjusting screw about a half turn out to give it more fuel so it can idle. It's not getting up to full speed, so we might have to replace the spark plug and look at the spark arrestor screen in the muffler. It's still going to move quite a bit of air, so it's going to still do some work. However, I don't think any regular person would want to lug this thing around for more than 10 minutes. So my question is, would you use this giant handheld blower? It weighs in at a whopping 14 pounds. That's 5 pounds heavier than a conventional blower. I'm really interested in your opinion. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate your time. Please feel free to ask any questions, and I hope to see you in my next video.